The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its transparent walls offering a breathtaking view of the spiral arms of the Andromeda Galaxy. Representatives from over 2,000 species filled the floating platforms that orbited the central speaking sphere, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of evolution's endless creativity. Elder Vexthara of the Ancient Keepers stood at the center, her 6 arms gesticulating with urgency that had not been seen from her species in millennia. The Keepers were old, older than recorded history, older than the formation of most civilizations present. When they spoke, the galaxy usually listened. Today was different. "You fools rush toward extinction," Vexthara's voice carried across the chamber through universal translators, each species hearing it in their native tongue. "The humans are not like us. They are not like anyone we have encountered in our travels across the void." A ripple of dismissive chittering arose from the Zephyrian delegation. Ambassador Crixtal, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's ambient light into rainbow patterns, spoke with barely concealed contempt. "Elder, with respect, you speak of a species that barely achieved faster-than-light travel 50 of their years ago. They possess no significant military assets, no advanced technology, and their empire spans merely 12 star systems." 12 systems, repeated Commander Thokvar of the Bruthan Empire, his massive frame causing his platform to groan under the weight. The Bruthans were warriors by nature, their society built on conquest and strength. "My fleet alone controls 300 systems. What threat could these humans possibly pose?" Vexthara's ancient eyes, black as the void between stars, fixed on each speaker in turn. "You measure them by your own standards. This is your first mistake." She activated a holographic display showing the Sol system, a simple yellow star with its family of planets. "Observe their homeworld, a planet racked by natural disasters, where survival required constant struggle against an environment that actively tried to kill them." The hologram zoomed in on Earth, showing massive hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and the daily violence of nature that shaped human evolution. "While your species evolved on stable worlds with predictable climates, humans learned to thrive in chaos. Every day of their existence was a battle." Senator Yilquen of the Pacifist Coalition, her translucent body pulsing with calming blue light, spoke softly. "Violence begets violence, Elder. Perhaps this is precisely why we should guide them toward peaceful coexistence. Our research shows that species with violent origins can be successfully integrated into galactic society through proper diplomatic channels." "Diplomatic channels," Vexthara repeated, her tone carrying the weight of eons. "Tell me, Senator, what do you know of human history?" "We have studied their records," Senator Yilquen replied confidently. "Yes, they had conflicts, but all species do in their primitive stages. They have shown remarkable progress in recent decades. Their United Earth government has been peaceful in all first contact scenarios." Vexthara's laugh was like the grinding of continental plates. "Peaceful in first contact because they are still learning, still observing, still deciding who you are." The hologram shifted to display human historical records, wars, battles, conquests spanning thousands of years. In their recorded history alone, they have fought over 14,000 distinct military conflicts. They have weapons capable of rendering their homeworld uninhabitable, and they built these weapons while still using chemical rockets. The chamber fell silent. The number was staggering by galactic standards. Most species had perhaps a dozen major conflicts throughout their entire evolutionary history. "But surely," interrupted Trade Minister Zekon of the Commerce Guild, his robotic voice lacking inflection, "they have moved beyond such primitive behaviors. Profit and trade civilize all species eventually." "Have they?" Vexthara gestured, and the hologram displayed recent human activities. "Their peaceful exploration vessels carry enough firepower to level cities. Their research stations are positioned at strategic points throughout their territory. They study every ship that enters their space, catalog every technology they encounter, and analyze every weakness they observe. The display showed detailed schematics that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. The humans had been busy during their 50 years of galactic contact, learning and cataloging information about every species they encountered with methodical precision. "This proves nothing," declared Supreme Admiral Korthak of the Military Coalition, his forearms crossed in dismissal. "Intelligence gathering is standard protocol for any emerging species." "Standard protocol," Vexithara agreed. "But observe what they do with this intelligence." The hologram shifted to show human military academies, research facilities, and training centers. While you debate and form committees, they prepare. While you engage in diplomatic discourse, they study your every word, every gesture, every weakness you inadvertently reveal. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the chamber. "I have lived for 12,000 years. I have witnessed the rise and fall of 47 civilizations. I have seen species that could manipulate matter at the quantum level, beings that could traverse dimensions at will, and empires that spanned entire galactic clusters." The ancient being's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, yet every creature in the chamber heard her clearly. "None of them frightened me like humans do." Ambassador Krixtal's crystalline form flashed with indignation. "With respect, Elder, your age may be clouding your judgment. Humans are primitives playing with technology they barely understand. They pose no threat to established galactic powers." "Primitives," Vexithara mused. "Let me tell you about primitives. When the Korvathi horde swept through the Outer Rim 3 millennia ago, consuming everything in their path, who stopped them? The technologically advanced Nexus Empire with their reality-bending weapons? The Transcended Collective with their mastery over time and space?" She waited, but no one answered. No. They were stopped by the Grexians, a simple species with basic technology who understood something the advanced civilizations had forgotten. Sometimes, victory requires the willingness to sacrifice everything. The hologram displayed the legendary Battle of Grex Prime, where an entire species committed suicide rather than allow the Korvathi to advance further. The Grexians destroyed their own homeworld and took half the Korvathi fleet with them. That act of absolute commitment broke the Horde's will to continue. Vexithara's 6 arms spread wide. Humans have that same willingness to sacrifice everything for their convictions, but they combine it with an intelligence and adaptability that the Grexians lacked. They do not simply react to threats, they eliminate them permanently. "You speak in hypotheticals," Commander Thokvar growled. "Show us proof of this supposed threat." The hologram shifted once more, displaying classified human military exercises that should have been impossible for anyone to access. The gathered delegates watched in growing unease as human forces demonstrated tactics that violated conventional military doctrine, strategies that prioritized total victory over self-preservation, techniques that treated soldiers as expendable resources in pursuit of objective completion. "How did you obtain this information?" demanded Supreme Admiral Korthak. "Because humans allowed me to obtain it," Vexithara replied calmly. "They know I am here. They know what I am saying. This demonstration is for your benefit, not mine." The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. The implications were staggering. If humans could penetrate Keeper information networks, what else might they have accessed? "Silence!" Vexithara commanded, and the ancient authority in her voice cut through the chaos. "You wish to know why I fear them? It is not their technology or their tactics. It is their memory." She gestured, and the hologram displayed human memorials, monuments, and historical records. Every slight, Every betrayal, every act of aggression against them is recorded, remembered, and passed down through generations. They do not forget, they do not forgive, and when they finally act, they do not stop until the threat is completely eliminated. But they have been nothing but cooperative, protested Senator Yilquen. Every diplomatic interaction has been cordial, professional, respectful. Because they are still deciding, Vexithara repeated. But that decision will not remain open forever. Soon, very soon, they will conclude their observation period. They will classify each of you as either ally, neutral, or threat, and those they classify as threats. The hologram displayed a simple message in multiple languages. Remember the Alamo. Remember Pearl Harbor. Remember 9/11. Remember what humans do to those who underestimate them. What are these references? Asked Trade Minister Zekhon. Historical turning points where humans transformed from defensive to aggressive, from reactive to proactive. Each represents a moment when humanity decided that peaceful coexistence was no longer possible. Vexthara's voice carried the weight of prophecy. The pattern is always the same. They appear weak. They suffer an attack. They seem to accept their losses. And then they systematically destroy their enemies so completely that the threat never arises again. She pointed to specific entries in the human historical record. They fought a global war against fascism and did not stop until they occupied the capitals of their enemies. They faced nuclear annihilation and responded by creating weapons that could end all life on their planet. When terrorists attacked their cities, they spent decades hunting down every individual involved, regardless of cost or international opinion. The chamber was now completely silent, the weight of her words settling like a shroud over the assembled delegates. You still do not understand, Vexithara continued. This is not about military might or technological superiority. This is about psychology. When humans decide that you are their enemy, they do not seek to defeat you. They seek to ensure you can never threaten them again. They will sacrifice their own lives, their own worlds, their own future if necessary to accomplish this goal. Ambassador Krixtal's form flickered with uncertainty. Even if what you say is true, they are outnumbered millions to one. No single species could threaten the entire galaxy. No single species, Vexithara agreed. But humans have already begun the process of creating allies. They offer technology transfers, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. They are building a network of relationships that will serve their purposes when the time comes. The hologram displayed the growing web of human diplomatic connections, trade agreements, and cooperative research projects. What appeared to be simple diplomacy showed a more complex pattern when viewed from Vexithara's perspective, a careful strategy of creating dependencies and obligations throughout the galaxy. Every species they befriend becomes a potential asset in future. The Terran embassy on Nexus Prime was an unremarkable building by galactic standards. 3 stories of simple construction, housing fewer than 200 humans among a population of billions of aliens. To most observers, it represented humanity's modest place in galactic civilization, a minor species granted diplomatic recognition more out of courtesy than respect. Ambassador Sarah Chen knew better. She stood in the embassy's secure communications center, watching real-time intelligence feeds from across the galaxy. The chamber was hidden 3 levels beneath the official embassy floors, accessible only to those with the highest security clearance. What appeared from the outside to be a simple diplomatic mission was, in reality, the nerve center of the most extensive intelligence operation in galactic history. Report, Chen said quietly to the dozen analysts seated at workstations around the circular room. Agent Marcus Webb, formerly of Earth's Special Intelligence Division, looked up from his console. Zephyrian military exercises concluded 36 hours ago. They tested their new quantum disruption weapons against simulated human vessels. How did they perform? Chen asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Every simulated engagement resulted in total human fleet destruction within minutes, Webb replied. They're quite pleased with themselves. Chen nodded. And they don't know that we've been feeding them our old ship specifications for the past 2 years. She turned to another analyst. What about Bruthan expansion activities? Agent Lisa Park, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface, pulled up stellar charts. 3 more systems claimed in the past month, all along our projected expansion routes. Commander Thakvar is implementing what he calls the Human Containment Protocol, containing us to our current 12 systems. Chen mused. How thoughtful of them to show their hand so clearly. She moved to the central display, which showed a 3-dimensional map of human space and surrounding territories. Timeline update? Operation Reckoning is ahead of schedule, reported Chief Analyst David Kim, his face pale from months of underground work. The Pacifist Coalition voted to implement the Gentle Guidance Protocols for Human Development. They plan to introduce educational programs designed to modify our aggressive tendencies. Chen's smile was cold. Cultural re-education. How original. She activated a secure channel to Earth. Control, this is Nexus Station. Request permission to proceed to Phase 2. The response came immediately, the voice of Admiral Harrison Rodriguez crackling through encrypted channels. Sarah, this is Control. You are authorized for Phase 2 implementation. The President sends her regards and reminds you that history will judge us by what we do in the next 72 hours. Understood, Control. Nexus Station out. Chen turned to address her team. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been preparing for this moment for 50 years. Our ancestors dreamed of reaching the stars and finding friends among them. Instead, we found predators, manipulators, and species that view us as either pets or problems to be solved. She activated the main display, showing detailed intelligence profiles on every major galactic power. The Zephyrians see us as primitive barbarians to be contained or destroyed. The Bruthans view us as potential slaves or target practice. The Pacifist Coalition wants to lobotomize our culture and turn us into their version of civilized beings. Agent Webb looked up from his console. Ma'am, we're detecting massive fleet movements from 17 different star systems. It appears multiple species are coordinating some kind of joint operation. The intervention, Chen said calmly. They've decided we're too dangerous to remain independent and too valuable to simply destroy. She turned to Agent Park. Activate the sleeper networks, all of them. Park's hands hesitated over her controls. Ma'am, that's over 2,000 agents across 47 star systems. If we activate them all simultaneously, there will be no going back, Chen finished. I know. Do it. Park's fingers moved across the interface, sending encrypted signals to human operatives who had spent decades building covers, relationships, and trust throughout the galaxy. Diplomats, traders, researchers, tourists, all of them carefully placed assets who had been waiting for this moment. The first responses came within minutes. From the Zephyrian capital world, a seemingly routine message from the human cultural exchange student. Package delivered, xenobiology lab secured. From Bruthan military headquarters. Maintenance contract completed, all primary systems accessed. From the Pacifist Coalition's central planning facility, educational materials distributed, network compromise successful. Chen watched the reports flood in, each one representing years of careful preparation coming to fruition. Mr. Webb, initiate communication blackout protocols. I want every species to lose contact with their fleets simultaneously. Ma'am, Webb said hesitantly, some of these infiltrations required our people to build genuine relationships. There are human operatives out there who have families, friends, lives. Who volunteered for this mission knowing the cost? Chen replied firmly. Every person activated today understood that they were sacrificing their old lives for humanity's survival. They made that choice willingly. The truth was more complex than Chen let on. Many of the human operatives scattered throughout the galaxy had indeed built genuine relationships. Dr. Emma Walsh had spent 15 years on Kepler Station, where she had married a Zephyrian scientist and helped raise his children from his first marriage. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison had become the closest advisor to a Bruthan military commander who truly considered him a brother, but they had also never forgotten their true purpose. "Signal from the home fleet," announced Agent Park. "Admiral Rodriguez reports all vessels have reached their positions and are awaiting orders." Chen nodded. For 50 years, humanity's public space presence had remained modest. 12 star systems with what appeared to be a small defensive fleet. What the galactic community didn't know was that humans had been building in secret, using asteroid mining operations and deep space construction facilities hidden in the void between stars. "How many ships do we actually have?" Webb asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Enough," Chen replied. "More than enough." The answer was classified, but Chen knew the numbers by heart. 3,000 frontline warships, each one incorporating technology stolen, bought, or reverse-engineered from every species humanity had encountered. Another 15,000 support vessels, supply ships, and mobile platforms capable of establishing human presence anywhere in the galaxy. But the ships were not humanity's greatest weapon. "Initiate Phase 2 communications," Chen ordered. "All targets, all frequencies." Across the galaxy, human voices began speaking simultaneously, not just on official diplomatic channels, but on every communication network humanity had managed to penetrate. Entertainment broadcasts, military frequencies, emergency channels, private communications, every species found themselves listening to the same message, delivered in their own language by humans they had never suspected existed. The message was simple, direct, and terrifying in its implications. "Citizens of the galaxy, this is the human colonial authority. For 50 years, we have lived among you as friends, partners, and neighbors. We have learned your languages, studied your cultures, and come to understand your societies better than you understand them yourselves. We know about the fleets currently moving toward human space. We know about the plans to forcibly modify our society, to contain our expansion, or to eliminate what you perceive as a threat to galactic stability. We are here to inform you that these plans will not succeed." On Zephyrian Prime, Ambassador Crixtall watched in horror as his supposedly secure military planning facility erupted in explosions. The human cultural exchange student, a young woman who had spent 3 years learning Zephyrian poetry and art, calmly walked out of the burning building, transmitting detailed intelligence about Zephyrian military capabilities as she did so. On Bruthan's Central Command, Commander Thokvar discovered that his most trusted military advisor had spent the past decade systematically sabotaging every major weapon system in the Bruthan fleet. Critical targeting computers contained human-designed viruses, ammunition depots had been contaminated with compounds that would cause catastrophic failures, and navigation systems would guide Bruthan ships directly into human weapons ranges. Throughout the Pacifist Coalition's territory, human researchers and students simultaneously revealed themselves as intelligence operatives who had spent years mapping every weakness in the Coalition's infrastructure. Power grids failed, communication networks collapsed, and transportation systems ground to a halt as decades of careful sabotage activated simultaneously. "Sir," reported Agent Park, her voice filled with awe, "we're receiving confirmation codes from sleeper agents in all 47 target systems. Infrastructure damage is extensive." "And the fleets?" Chen asked. "Dead in space, ma'am. Navigation systems compromised, weapons offline, communication blackout in effect," Estimated time to restore basic functionality ranges from 6 weeks to 6 months, depending on the species. Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. 50 years of careful planning, of pretending to be weak while growing strong, of appearing peaceful while preparing for war. Every diplomatic interaction had been intelligence gathering. Every cultural exchange had been an infiltration opportunity. Every act of friendship had been cover for espionage. Now comes the difficult part, Chen said. Open channels to all galactic governments, full-spectrum broadcast. The communication that followed would be remembered as the moment humanity revealed its true nature to the galaxy. Ambassador Chen's image appeared simultaneously on every screen, every display, every communication device throughout known space. To the leaders and citizens of the galactic community, Chen began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You have spent 50 years judging humanity by your own standards, assuming that we would respond to threats the way your species would respond. This was a mistake. When you planned to contain us, we planned to be uncontainable. When you prepared to modify our culture, we prepared to preserve it by any means necessary. When you moved to eliminate the threat you believed we represented, we made sure that threat became reality. Your fleets are disabled. Your infrastructure is compromised. Your governments are, at this moment, discovering exactly how thoroughly we have penetrated your societies. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle across the galaxy. We did not want this war. We would have been content to expand peacefully, to trade fairly, to coexist as neighbors. But you could not allow us to remain free, independent, and uncontrolled. You saw our strength as a threat to your security, rather than recognizing it as an opportunity for friendship. Elder Vexithara warned you. She told you that humans do not forgive. She told you that we remember every slight, every betrayal, every act of aggression. You ignored her wisdom, and now you will learn why she feared us. This is not conquest. This is not revenge. This is justice. Every species that participated in the planned intervention against human space will face consequences appropriate to their actions. Those who merely planned our containment will find themselves contained. Those who planned our destruction will discover what true destruction means. And those who believed they could quietly modify our culture to suit their preferences will learn that some cultures cannot be changed. They can only be respected or opposed. Chen's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. To those species who remained neutral, who advocated for peaceful coexistence, who opposed the intervention, you have nothing to fear from humanity. We remember our friends as clearly as we remember our enemies. The galaxy is about to change. The age of humanity's patience is over. The age of humanity's dominance has begun. The transmission ended, leaving a galaxy-wide silence that stretched for long minutes. Then, slowly, the responses began pouring in, panic from some species, desperate pleas for mercy from others, and careful diplomatic overtures from those who had remained neutral in the original debate. Chen turned to her team. Phase 3 preparations? Already underway, ma'am, reported Agent Kim. Colony fleets are moving to secure 43 strategic systems. Defense platforms are deploying to protect established human territory, and the ultimatum packages are being prepared for delivery. Good. Chen looked out through the embassy's reinforced windows at Nexus Prime's skyline, where alien civilians went about their daily lives, unaware that their galaxy had just been turned upside down. Remember, everyone, we didn't start this war, but we're certainly going to finish it. In the depths of space, the human fleets that had remained, 6 months after the revelation that would later be known as humanity's truth, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Where once hundreds of species had enjoyed relative autonomy under the loose confederation of the Galactic Council, now clear lines had been drawn between the human sphere of influence and those territories that remained under alien control. The Zephyrian Crystalline Republic had been the first to fall. Ambassador Crixtal sat in what had once been his office in the Galactic Council Chamber, now serving as an administrative center for the Human Colonial Authority. His crystalline form had lost much of its previous luminescence, the stress of recent events causing his natural light-refracting properties to dim significantly. Across from him sat Colonel Sarah Martinez, the human military administrator assigned to oversee Zephyrian integration into what humans called the cooperative zones. She was younger than Crixtal had expected when humanity's true nature was revealed, perhaps 35 in human years, but her eyes held the weight of someone who had seen far more than her age suggested. "The reconstruction efforts are proceeding ahead of schedule," Martinez reported, consulting a data pad that contained information Crixtal knew he would never be permitted to see. "Power grid restoration is at 97%. Communication networks are fully operational under human oversight. And your people have adapted to the new administrative protocols better than our projections indicated." Crixtal's form flickered with what humans had learned to recognize as Zephyrian distress. "Colonel, with respect, we must discuss the labor quotas for the new mining operations. My people are not physically suited for the type of excavation work your engineers are requesting." "That's already been addressed," Martinez replied without looking up from her data pad. "We're bringing in Bruthan work crews for the heavy excavation. Your people will handle the precision work, crystalline matrix analysis, quantum resonance tuning, that sort of thing. It's actually better suited to your natural abilities." The casual way she discussed moving populations around like chess pieces still unsettled Crixtal. "And the Bruthans have agreed to this arrangement?" Martinez finally looked up, and Crixtal saw something in her expression that made his crystalline structure shiver. "The Bruthans are no longer in a position to disagree with anything we suggest." 3 systems away, what remained of the Bruthan Empire was discovering the truth of that statement. Commander Thokvar had once commanded the most feared military force in the galaxy, 300 star systems protected by fleets that had never known defeat in conventional warfare. Now he sat in the wreckage of his flagship, watching human vessels methodically dismantle the orbital shipyards that had taken his people centuries to build. The human assault had been unlike anything in recorded galactic history. No demands for surrender, no negotiations, no opportunity for honorable combat. The humans had simply appeared in every major Bruthan system simultaneously, their fleets emerging from hyperspace with coordinates that should have been impossible to calculate. The weapons they brought were horrifying, not for their destructive power, but for their precision. Human ships could target specific systems within Bruthan vessels, leaving life support intact while systematically destroying engines, weapons, and communication arrays. Entire fleets had been rendered helpless, without a single life lost. But it was the psychological warfare that truly broke Bruthan resistance. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Graktor, his massive frame trembling with rage and fear, "the humans are broadcasting again." Thokvar activated the communication array, though he dreaded what he would hear. The human broadcasts had been running for weeks now, not propaganda or demands, but simple statements of fact that eroded Bruthan morale more effectively than any weapon. The voice that filled the command bridge was calm, professional, and utterly without emotion. "Attention, Bruthan forces. This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Human Colonial Fleet. We are transmitting updated casualty reports from your recent engagements with our forces." The holographic display activated, showing detailed statistics that made Thokvar's warriors gasp in dismay. Human casualties, 1-247 dead, 391 wounded. Bruthan casualties, 2-347, 851 captured, 891 445 vessels destroyed or disabled, 47 systems under human occupation. Your tactical doctrine emphasized superior numbers and frontal assault, the human admiral continued. Our tactical doctrine emphasized preparation, intelligence, and the complete elimination of enemy capability to resist. The results speak for themselves. Thokvar knew the broadcast was meant to break their will to fight, and he hated how effectively it was working. Bruthan military culture was built on the concept of honorable combat between equals. This was extermination disguised as warfare. "Sir," Graktor whispered, "what are our orders?" Thokvar stared at the human ships surrounding his crippled vessel. Each one was smaller than his flagship, but they moved with a coordination and purpose that made his own fleet look like children playing with toys. "Signal the humans," he said finally. "We surrender." The response came immediately. "Surrender is not necessary, Commander Thokvar. Your integration into the colonial authority has already begun. Report to Docking Bay 7 for processing and reassignment." Integration. Not conquest, not occupation. Integration. As if they had always planned for the Bruthans to become part of humanity's empire. Meanwhile, in the neutral territory that had once housed the pacifist coalition, a very different drama was playing out. Senator Yil Quen sat in meditation chamber, her translucent form pulsing with the deep blue patterns that indicated profound distress among her people. Around her, the other survivors of the coalition's leadership attempted to find some path forward that didn't end in their complete absorption into human space. The humans had been creative in their approach to the pacifist coalition. Rather than the swift military action that had characterized their treatment of the Zephyrians and Bruthans, the humans had begun what they called cultural integration protocols. Human advisors had arrived in coalition space not as conquerors, but as helpers, offering solutions to problems the coalition had been struggling with for decades. Food shortages on agricultural worlds. Human terraforming technology could solve that. Energy crises in industrial systems. Human fusion reactors were more efficient than anything the coalition possessed. Social unrest among younger generations. Human educational programs offered structure and purpose. Each solution came with human oversight, human administrators, and gradually, human values being integrated into coalition society. "It's brilliant," admitted Councillor Zenthak, his usual pacifist principles at war with his admiration for human strategy. "They're not conquering us. They're making us dependent on them. Every month we need their help more and find ourselves less capable of independence." Senator Yil Quen's pulsing shifted to the deep purple that indicated philosophical contemplation. Perhaps this is what humanity meant when they spoke of justice rather than revenge. They're not destroying our culture. They're absorbing it into theirs. "Is that better or worse than what happened to the others?" asked Councillor Murdane. Before anyone could answer, the chamber's communication system activated. The voice that emerged was familiar, Dr. Emma Walsh, the human xenobiologist who had been working with coalition research stations for over a decade. "Senators, this is Dr. Walsh. I'm requesting permission to address the Coalition Council regarding our mutual future." Senator Yilquen activated the response system. "Dr. Walsh, you have our attention." The holographic display activated, showing Dr. Walsh in what appeared to be a comfortable office aboard a human vessel. She looked older than when she had first arrived in coalition space, and her expression carried the weight of someone who had made difficult choices. "I want to start by apologizing for the deception," Dr. Walsh began. "I genuinely did come to coalition space to study your societies and learn from your commitment to peaceful coexistence. The relationships I built, the friendships I formed, those were real." She paused, and Senator Yilquen could see genuine regret in the human's eyes. "But I was also gathering intelligence for this moment. Every cultural practice I studied, every social structure I analyzed, every conversation I had was also being evaluated for potential weaknesses or strengths in a future conflict." Councillor Zenthak leaned forward. "Then why reveal this to us? Why not maintain the deception?" "Because the deception is no longer necessary," Dr. Walsh replied. "The conflict phase of humanity's expansion is over. We've moved into the integration phase, and that requires honesty about what we've learned and what we intend to do with that knowledge." The display shifted to show detailed sociological analyses of coalition society, studies that were far more comprehensive than anything the coalition had produced about themselves. We know that your commitment to pacifism isn't weakness. It's a sophisticated survival strategy that has allowed your species to avoid the cycle of violence that consumed most of our respective histories. We also know that this philosophy makes you uniquely valuable as administrators and negotiators in our expanding empire. Empire. The humans were no longer pretending this was anything else. "What are you proposing?" Senator Yilquin asked. "Full integration into the human colonial authority as an autonomous administrative region," Dr. Walsh replied. "You maintain your cultural identity and philosophical principles, but operate under human oversight and protection. In exchange, you help us manage the integration of less cooperative species." The offer was seductive and terrifying in equal measure. The coalition would survive, but only as a specialized component of human civilization. "And if we refuse?" asked Councillor Merdane. Dr. Walsh's expression didn't change, but her voice carried a finality that chilled the gathered delegates. "Refusal is not an option. The question is whether integration happens through cooperation or absorption. We would prefer cooperation, but we are prepared for either outcome." As the communication ended, Senator Yilquin realized that the humans had learned the most important lesson of galactic politics. It was better to be feared than loved, but it was best of all to be indispensable. Far from the centers of power and politics, Elder Vexthara of the Keepers stood in her ancient observatory, watching the transformation of the galaxy through instruments older than most civilizations. Her 12,000 years of life had prepared her for many things, but she had still underestimated the speed and completeness of humanity's transition from apparent weakness to absolute dominance. A communication request activated on her personal channel, a privilege granted to very few beings in the galaxy. She was not surprised to see Ambassador Sarah Chen's image appear. "Elder Vexithara," Chen said respectfully, "I hope you're well." "As well as can be expected," Vexithara replied. "I assume this is not a social call." "You warned the galaxy about humanity's true nature," Chen said without preamble. "You understood us better than we expected anyone to understand us. That kind of insight is valuable." Vexithara's ancient eyes narrowed. "You're offering me a position in your new order." "I'm offering you the opportunity to help shape it," Chen corrected. "The human colonial authority needs advisors who understand the deep history of galactic civilization, someone who can help us avoid the mistakes that brought down previous empires. And in exchange, the Keeper worlds remain independent. Your archives are protected. Your people continue their role as historians and observers, but with human backing to ensure your safety." It was a generous offer, and Vexithara suspected that was exactly why Chen was making it. The humans had learned that the carrot was often more effective than the stick, especially when dealing with species whose cooperation they actually needed. "Why should I trust that humanity won't eventually turn on the Keepers the way you've turned on everyone else?" Vexithara asked. Chen's smile was genuine. "Because we need someone to remember. Every empire falls eventually, Elder. When humanity's time comes to an end, whether that's 100 years from now or 10,000, someone needs to be there to record what we accomplished and what we got wrong. You plan for your own downfall?" "We plan for everything," Chen replied. "That's what makes us human." After the communication ended, Vexithara stood in the darkness of her observatory, contemplating the transformed galaxy. Humanity had done exactly what she predicted they would do. They had identified their enemies, prepared methodically for conflict, and then achieved total victory through superior planning and absolute commitment to their goals. But they had also done something she hadn't expected. They had learned to distinguish between enemies and potential allies, between threats and resources. Rather than simply destroying everything in their path, they had created a new order that incorporated the strengths of other species while eliminating their capacity for independence. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. And it was absolutely, undeniably human. As she watched human ships moving through the galaxy, establishing new colonies and integrating new populations, Vexithara began composing the historical record that would explain to future generations how a single species had transformed from galactic newcomers to absolute rulers in the span of 6 months. The entry would begin with a simple statement. They warned us that humans don't forgive. We should have listened. The galaxy had learned that lesson now. Whether they would remember it long enough to matter remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. Humanity's age of expansion was just beginning, and this time no one would underestimate them again. Hidden for decades, began moving toward their assigned targets. Each ship carried not just weapons and warriors, but colonists, engineers, and the infrastructure needed to establish permanent human presence throughout the galaxy. The age of humanity asking for permission was over. The age of humanity taking what it needed had begun. And Elder Vexithara, watching the chaos unfold from her ancient stronghold, could only whisper a prayer for the species that had ignored her warnings. The humans had finally stopped pretending to be harmless, conflicts. Every technological exchange gives them insights into potential weaknesses. Every diplomatic protocol they learn becomes intelligence about how galactic society functions. Her ancient eyes surveyed the chamber. They are preparing for a war that hasn't started yet, against enemies they haven't identified yet, using resources they haven't collected yet. Supreme Admiral Korthak leaned forward, his massive frame intimidating even through the holographic connection. If they are such a threat, why do you not advocate for immediate military action? Strike them down before they become dangerous. Vexithara's response chilled the chamber to absolute silence. Because it is already too late. They have already decided who among you are threats. The implications hung heavy in the air. If humans had indeed been conducting the kind of comprehensive intelligence gathering Vexithara described, they would already know which species posed potential problems for their expansion, which governments were unstable, which military forces could threaten human interests. "What do you counsel, then?" asked Senator Yilquen, her usual confidence shaken. "Prepare," Vexithara said simply. "But not for war. Prepare for judgment. Because humans don't just fight wars, they conduct trials, and they have been gathering evidence for 50 years. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, many cast nervous glances at the human observation post that had been installed 6 months ago for cultural exchange purposes. The two human representatives sat quietly, taking notes, their expressions giving away nothing. But Elder Vexithara knew that behind those calm facades, the humans were making their lists and checking them twice.